Greetings, productive programmers. So we are going to continue our story of building a Medium.com-like clone. Of course, ours won't look exactly like Medium.com, but in terms of functionality, it will have quite a bit of functionality, and you could tweak it to look very similar to Medium.com if you want to. We'll just do some minimal setup, but the functionality will be very similar as well. So to get our application to function like Medium.com, we need to have an authentication endpoint that we can sign into, which, as you remember, we now already have. In the previous video, we set this up, so this is taken care of for us. So let's take a look at how Medium.com functions and get a better idea of what do we need to do to be able to build the functionality that they have and do that in our blog application. So let's go ahead and let's get started. And I just authenticated and set up an account. And if I come in here to my profile, you can see that we have stories and we are able to write our own stories. And we have a title and we have an area. So this looks like a body area that we can type our messages in. And then we can publish our stories here. So that's all we need to do to set up a very similar type of functionality. So let's set up stories in our application, and our stories will have a title and a body area. And obviously they need to be associated with our users. And to do this with Phoenix LiveView, it can be super easy. Actually, we can take care of all the complexity using generators, just like we did with the authentication. We can basically generate a ton of code for us in a very short period of time that functions mostly like Medium.com will when it comes to their stories. So we'll need to have stories, and those stories will have a story module that will all be stored inside of a stories table. So let's break down this command here real quickly just to talk about what do these parts mean? Because in our authentication steps, we had account, we had user, and we had users. So what are the three parts of this generator here? Let's talk about that. So before we create these stories, let's just go ahead and let's do a mix Phoenix gen live, and let's just enter some random information because this is going to throw an error for us. It's going to say invalid arguments, and the description that the generator gives us actually describes exactly how the functionality works. So you can see this is actually similar to our previous example using authentication where we had accounts, users, and we set up some user information about our users. So if we look here, it says that the generators basically expect you to create a generator that has a context module name. So that's the first parameter. So in this example that they give us, it would be accounts. So that would be the context module name. And then we have a singular form as well as a plural form for the names that we generate. So user and then users. So let's go ahead and let's do our mix gen live stories. So it sounds funny when I say it like that, but it's basically the context module name and then the singular form of story and then the plural form of stories. So this is useful because with user and users, all you have to do is add an S to have, the singular form is user, and then you just add an S to have the plural form. So stories, I like this example because it showcases an important reason to actually have to define the plural version, because stories is IES, it's not just S. You don't just put story with an S after the Y, right? So that's why you have to define it 2 times. And the stories is going to be the name of our database table. And then story will be how we use in our application when we want to refer to a single story. And then stories will be our context module name, which we can take a look at once that gets generated. So the other thing that we need to do is we need to define the fields that we want our stories to have. So we saw that Medium.com has a title and a body area. So we're going to do that. We're going to set up a title, and then we'll do colon, and we're going to specify that this will be a string. And then we are going to also create a body, and this is going to be text area. This is going to have large amounts of text. So, the title is just a simple string, and the body area is a large field of text. And then we can go ahead, and this is an important component here. We actually want our stories to be tied to the users because we will have authentication just like Medium.com does, and we tie our stories to our users. So we have to set that up by doing a relationship between our stories table and our users table. So we are going to have our stories table store the user ID, and we're going to tell it that that references the users. And so I'm going to type, it's hard to talk and type it sometimes, so forgive me. So references colon, and then we're going to do users, and then we will basically this user ID will be referencing the users table that we generated in our authentication step. Because if we come in here into our library and our blog, we can see our accounts area has users. So this user schema that we set up before and we looked at in the previous video, this ID will reference the user that actually creates the stories. Now we'll have to take some steps after we use this generator command. We're going to have to take some steps to make sure that our application actually properly ties our stories to our users. So there will be another part to this. It won't do everything magically for us per se, but it will do quite a bit of magic for us. These generators will take care of a ton of complexity. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at that. So I'm going to run this. And there we go. After our generators are created, it's very important that we take note of the live routes that are set up, that are provided to us in the terminal output. The live routes, basically Phoenix will tell us exactly how we need to set up our live routes so that way we can access them, because our generator, as you can see, created all of these files. So it created the ability to view the stories, to show them, to see a list of them in an index. It also created the form component, which I think is really the most important piece out of everything. The form component allows us to have an interactive form to create the stories, basically very similar to the form that we're seeing here at medium.com. So don't underestimate the power of that form component. I think that's really to me, that's the most important part of all of these generators. And it's not just, not just creating the file. And just to show you just the form component, for example, I won't go into all of these. We'll see them as we go through the course, obviously, quite a few of these. But just to take a sneak peek, let's look at the stories file that was created. And let's go, actually, sorry, we want to go to blog web. So we want to go into blog web live, and then we want to go into the story live. And there's our form component that was generated. So again, it didn't just create the file. Look at this. It created all the code to basically handle form submissions, handle the events, handle updating stories, handle creating new stories, so saving new stories. It set up all of that, and it set up all the interactions with Ecto, which is our database. So it set up all the interactions to basically create stories and put that into our database. So we'll take a quick look at that in a minute. But yeah, I just wanted to really emphasize the importance of being able to generate all of this code. So it's not just the files that were generated, it's all the code, as well as the tests. So we actually generated a couple of tests here. So when we run our mix test again, it'll actually make sure that those are functioning correctly. And we still haven't set up these endpoints here. So if we run these tests, we get 6 failures. So that's pretty interesting. It says no route found for get stories. So isn't that cool? We have failing tests, and the tests were generated for us. They're failing because we didn't set up these routes here. So let's go ahead and set up these routes, and then let's see if this will make everything function. So it says to set up these routes under the browser scope inside of our blog web router.ex. So let's open up that file. I'm just control clicking on this, and I mean, VS Code is awesome. It just opens up the file for me. Otherwise, you can just navigate to it. It's underneath blog web. And then it is your router right here. So this router, it currently references the controller, and we're going to replace that. So, well, we can just paste these. For now, we'll just put these right here after the page controller. Because if I get rid of the page controller, then the home page won't load anymore because that's our / route. So let's just go ahead and let's just put these right here for now. I'm going to move these endpoints as we build in the authentication. But for now, I'm just going to put them here so they're publicly available, and I'm going to hit save. And then I am going to run the tests again and see if we can get those tests to be fixed. Because before we had 6 failures, most of them said the routes weren't available. Now look at that. It's passing. Isn't this so cool, the generators that Phoenix provides to you? I mean, the test cases, all of the code, all of the files. It's just, I love it. I mean, talk about productive programmer. This is You're going to be the most productive programmer for building out web applications by learning how to do this stuff efficiently. I just love this. I can't believe more people are not. I mean, you are on the cutting edge learning Phoenix LiveView, in my opinion. And you're going to be run laps around everybody that's not using this. Absolutely love the generators here. So again, these endpoints, we'll move them eventually and so forth. There's going to be a lot of changes coming up in this file, but let's go ahead and let's just run our application and let's see how everything is working. Okay, so we have our application loaded. Let's go back to our application here and start it. I love this. Again, Phoenix letting us know that our mix ecto migrate needs to be run. So this is happening because we just generated the stories schema. So if we come into our blog, we have stories here and we have our story schema set up. So this is saying that we want to create a table that has a body and a title and it associates with the user ID. Well, we can also see actually if we come down into the private folder here where we have our repo migrations, we can also see that the migration file has been created for setting up the stories. So create stories, and it's going to create a table called stories, and it's going to create one with the title, the body, and the user ID. So all of that is going to be generated for us with our migrations file. So again, the generators did all of this for us. Really, really cool. So in order to get our application running here, we can either run this command from the command line, right? We can either come in here and do this, or I'm not going to run that. This is really cool too. This does the same thing. It basically runs the command for us. We just click this button and now our application is working. So let's go ahead and let's just do, if we go back here and we look at our router, these are all of our endpoints that were created for us. So let's just go back and let's go to the /stories endpoint. And here it says list in stories, new story. Let's click new story. Let's type our first story and let's type in a body. This is my body, and then save story. Boom, created. Want to edit it? Come in here, change it, add a number 2. Boom, edited. Want to delete it? Click delete. Okay, it's deleted. All of that generated for us with the generators. I mean, we basically have a medium.com website like already, and we've run only a couple commands. I mean, it's most of the work in the heavy lifting has been generated for us, but obviously we need to do some work. So how do we get these posts right now? I just made all these. Here, let's go ahead and create another one just to demonstrate what this looks like in the database. So hello database, and then let's say hello again from the body, and let's click save. So let's take a look at what this looks like in our database. We're not logged in, we're not registered, so obviously these are not associated with users yet. So that's what we need to do with our application to get this to function like a medium.com like clone, where it's actually associated with users. Because right now, these stories are just being generated by anybody anonymously. That's not what we want. We want to have an application that allows users to have their own blog posts, and we are going to expand that functionality throughout the remainder of this course. So PSQL, capital U, gonna load into Postgres, enter my password, and we are going to connect to blog web. Oh, actually, sorry, it's dev. So let's go ahead and look at our tables. So now we have stories and we have users. So before we didn't have stories, but we just had users. Now we have stories. Also, just to quickly note, the stories ID sequence and the users ID sequence, we talked about this a bit when we were just looking at Ecto, but basically this is going to take care of the auto incrementing of keys. So all of our stories will have an ID. If you come in here and we edit the story, you can see at the top it says to edit. Remember, we created one story and we deleted it. So Phoenix, the database is taking care of the sequence of generating the primary keys. So this is story number 2, and that's where that ID comes from. So the sequence here is taking care of making sure our primary key is just auto sequenced and auto incremented for us. And yeah, we don't even have to think about it. Same thing with the users as well. So let's go ahead and let's just select everything from the stories. And we can see it says hello database, hello again from the body. You can see that the user ID is empty. So that's what we have to fix. We have to make our application function where the users are actually tied to our stories. So we have to take a look at that in the next lesson. That's going to be the next part of our journey. But, you know, this is huge. This is huge. We have the ability to create posts and edit them and delete them. And we did that all with virtually one command, essentially. So congratulations. This is, you've basically learned, you know, how to generate LiveView templates extremely efficiently and quickly. And we also saw how the tests are built in for us. Now, again, just remember you always have to copy those routes that the terminal provides to you and put them into your router. Before we go to the next lesson, let's just observe how it says scope / there's just a scope and a slash, and it says blog web do. If we actually scroll down here a bit, we'll see that there's a couple other scopes, and it says authentication scopes. It says scope / and we can see that it redirects if the user is authenticated. We have another one that requires authentication and another one that mounts the current user if they're logged in. So we are going to actually, in the next lesson, move these routes down to be requiring authentication. So let's go ahead in the next lesson and let's start adding the authentication steps to our application. All right, I'll see you in the next lesson.